Every relationship has a power dynamic, not if, every. The question isn't whether someone has more influence. The question is whether you're aware of it, and whether that influence is being used to build something mutual or to control you. Most people think power in relationships comes from who makes more money, who's more attractive, or who cares less. That's wrong. Power comes from one thing: who needs the other person's validation more. The person who is more attached to the outcome has less power. The person who is more afraid of losing the relationship has less power. The person who is more invested has less power. This doesn't mean you should try to care less. That's a recipe for loneliness. But it does mean you should be honest with yourself about where the dependency lies, because dependency without awareness is how people get trapped. Today I'm going to show you the invisible dynamics that run every romantic interaction, from first dates to long-term partnerships. No dark psychology games. Know how to make them obsessed with you. Just the patterns that determine who holds the frame, and how to make sure you're not the one losing yourself. Let's start with the first date, because first dates are where most people make a critical mistake. Most people walk into a first date hoping to be liked. That's the mistake. The prepared observer walks in to gather information. Whether they like you is secondary to whether they're safe, honest, and compatible. You're not auditioning for a role. You're conducting an interview, and you get to decide if they pass. Here's what to watch for on a first date. The server test. How do they treat the waiter? Sharp tones, dismissive gestures, outright rudeness, or not making eye contact when they order. That's not a bad day. That's how they treat people they perceive as lower status. And eventually, that's how they'll treat you. When the new relationship energy fades, when you've seen each other's flaws, when they're comfortable, the way they treat service staff is the way they'll treat you. The phone test. Do they check their phone repeatedly, look away mid-sentence, scroll while you're speaking? This isn't absent-mindedness, it's a dominance display. They're showing you that you're not their priority, that their attention is a resource they control, and they're teaching you to chase it. The X test. When do they bring up their ex? How do they describe the breakup? Someone who mentions their ex within the first 20 minutes is either not over them or is using the mention to make you compete. Someone who describes every ex as crazy is telling you how they'll describe you. Pay attention to the pattern, not the specific story. The question test. Do they ask about you, or do they monologue? Reciprocal curiosity is the minimum baseline for any healthy interaction. If they don't ask a single follow-up question about your life, your interests, your opinions, they're not interested in you. They're interested in an audience, and audiences are replaceable. Now let's talk about a pattern that shows up in dating, friendships, and even family dynamics. A pattern that most people don't recognize until they're already trapped. Warmth, connection, intensity, then suddenly distance. Coldness, withdrawal. You feel confused. You wonder what you did wrong. You replay the last conversation looking for your mistake. You try harder. You reach out more. You offer more. You apologize for things you're not sure you did. And then the warmth returns. Just enough to make you feel relieved. Just enough to make you think you fixed it. Just enough to keep you trying. This is not a coincidence. This is intermittent reinforcement, and it's the most addictive pattern the human nervous system knows. Here's the neuroscience. When rewards are predictable, your brain releases a steady amount of dopamine. When rewards are unpredictable, your brain releases more dopamine. Much more. The uncertainty creates a craving. The craving keeps you pursuing. The pursuit becomes the reward. This is why slot machines are more addictive than vending machines. You know the vending machine will give you a candy bar every time you put money in. That's fine. It's not exciting. The slot machine might give you nothing. It might give you a little. It might give you a lot. That uncertainty is what hooks your brain. The same mechanism works in relationships. Someone who is warm and cold, unpredictably, will hook your brain more effectively than someone who is consistently warm. You become addicted to the chase. You start performing behaviors you'd never normally do just to earn the next moment of warmth. Here's what this looks like in real life. You find yourself walking on eggshells. You've apologized for things that weren't your fault. You've abandoned plans or boundaries to get back in their good graces. You've stopped sharing things that might upset them. You've shrunk. If you recognize yourself in that description, you need to do something. Name it. Say to your partner or to yourself, "I've noticed a pattern where you're warm, then distant, then warm again. Can we talk about that?" Their response will tell you everything. If they apologize and explain, there's hope. Maybe they're stressed. Maybe they're dealing with something they haven't shared. A healthy person will engage with your concern. But if they gaslight you, "I don't know what you're talking about. You're too sensitive. You're imagining things," that's a different answer. That's the answer of someone who benefits from the pattern. They're not going to change it. They're going to make you feel crazy for noticing it. Now let's talk about something that looks like care, but is often control. A man rushes to protect his partner. He inserts himself between her and others. He answers for her. He handles situations she didn't ask to be handled. He warns her about people she should avoid. He offers to solve problems she didn't ask to have solved. This looks like chivalry. It feels like safety, but sometimes it's something else. It's isolation disguised as protection. Here's the test. Does the protection expand or contract your world? Does it give you more options or fewer? Does it make you feel capable or dependent? Genuine care wants you to be strong. It wants you to have friends, opinions, and independence. It celebrates when you handle things yourself. It steps back when you don't need help. Performative care wants you to be weak. It wants you to need the protector. It wants you to doubt your own judgment, so you rely on theirs. It creates problems, so it can solve them. Watch for rescue before request. They solve problems you didn't ask to have solved. They fight battles you didn't want fought. They intervene in situations you had under control. This isn't helpful. It's infantilizing. They're positioning themselves as the capable one and you as the dependent one. What do you do? Say, "I appreciate the concern, but I've got this." Then actually handle it. Their reaction will reveal their intent. A genuinely caring person will be proud of you. A controller will be angry or sulk. They might say, "Fine, do it yourself then," as if your independence is a punishment to them. One more pattern before I give you the tools to fix all of this. The frame battle. Every conversation has a frame. The unspoken assumption about what's happening, who's in charge, what the problem is, who's to blame. When someone says your tone is the problem, they're setting a frame. The frame is that you're the problem. When you say, "I'm not trying to have a tone," you've accepted their frame. Now you're arguing about your tone instead of whatever you were actually discussing. When someone says you're being defensive, they're setting a frame. The frame is that you're the one who's wrong. When you say, "I'm not being defensive," you've accepted their frame. Now you're arguing about your defensiveness. When someone says anyone would be upset, they're setting a frame. The frame is that they're normal and you're not. When you say, "I'm not upset," you've accepted their frame. Here's how you reset the frame. Don't defend, don't explain, return to facts. They say you're so defensive. You say, "I asked a question about the budget. Can we stay on that?" They say you don't really care about this relationship. You say, "I showed up. I'm here." What specific behavior are you referring to? They say you're impossible to talk to. You say, "We're talking right now." What would make this conversation work for you? Notice the pattern. You're not accepting their accusation. You're not rejecting it either. You're refusing to play on their field. You're returning to the concrete facts of what's happening, the budget, the behavior, the conversation itself. This works because it denies them the emotional reaction they're fishing for. Most frame attacks are designed to get you defensive. Defensive people give away power. When you stay calm and return to facts, you keep your power. You also expose their frame attack for what it is, an attempt to control the conversation by making you react. Here's what you actually do starting tomorrow. Action 1. On your next date or conversation, count how many questions they ask about you versus how many you ask about them. A 1-to-1 ratio is healthy. Anything below 1 to 3 is a yellow flag. They're not curious about you. They're performing interest. Action 2. If you feel confused about someone's behavior, write down a timeline. Monday warm, Tuesday cold, Wednesday warm again. Seeing it on paper breaks the intermittent reinforcement spell. It's harder to gaslight yourself when the pattern is written in black and white. Action 3. Practice the frame reset with something low stakes. A co-worker says you're always late to these meetings. You say, I was early to the last 3. What's different about today? No defensiveness, just facts. Watch how the dynamic shifts when you refuse to accept their frame. Here's the deepest truth I can share with you about relationships. Power in relationships isn't about winning, it's about not losing yourself. The patterns I've described: intermittent reinforcement, isolation disguised as care, frame attacks. These are not evidence that someone is evil. They're evidence that someone is insecure. Insecure people control because they're terrified of being controlled. They create dependency because they're terrified of abandonment. They attack frames because they're terrified of being wrong. Your job isn't to outmaneuver them. Your job is to know what's happening so you can decide what to do about it. Sometimes the answer is to talk it out, to show them the pattern and give them a chance to change. Healthy people can do that. They can see themselves in your description and want to be better. Sometimes the answer is to set a boundary, to say, I won't participate in this pattern anymore, and then hold that boundary even when it's hard. Sometimes the answer is to leave, to walk away from someone who has shown you that they will not change, that they benefit from your confusion, that your pain is acceptable to them as long as they stay in control. You can't make that decision if you don't see the pattern. Now you see it. The next time someone is warm and cold, you'll know what it is. The next time someone rescues you without being asked, you'll see the strings. The next time someone tries to make you defend yourself against a vague accusation, you'll reset the frame. You don't need to be ruthless. You don't need to be manipulative. You just need to see clearly. And clear seeing is its own kind of power. The person who sees the pattern can't be trapped by it. And that person is you now.